In a society cruelly divided by wealth and status, where power is concentrated in the hands of a few and the majority struggle to survive, the name Lucas Andrade was synonymous with arrogance and ruthlessness. As a merciless magnate, he despised the less fortunate, flaunting his power with an almost sadistic pleasure. However, the downfall of the powerful often begins with the most trivial acts. It was at a charity event, filled with the rich and influential, that Lucas's fate began to change. That night, he publicly humiliated a humble young worker named Clara Álvarez, unaware that this act would mark the beginning of his own downfall. The incident, captured on video and quickly going viral on social media, sparked a wave of outrage and solidarity for the young woman. But Clara was not just an ordinary worker. Hiding a tragic past and a surprising secret, she was, in fact, the heir to a lost fortune, whose family had been devastated by Lucas's corrupt dealings. Driven by the memory of her deceased father and the promise to restore her family's honor, Clara infiltrated the world of the rich under a false identity, determined to bring Lucas down and reclaim what was taken from her. As Clara gathered evidence and faced intense emotional challenges, the line between vengeance and justice began to blur. Lucas, on the other hand, started to realize the consequences of his actions, confronting his own inner demons. When Clara's plan reached its climax, a shocking twist was revealed. Her public humiliation was carefully orchestrated by herself as part of a larger scheme to expose Lucas and other corrupt elites. Clara emerged not only as a victim but as a shrewd and determined heroine, while Lucas, facing the depths of his failures, found an unexpected path to redemption. The Opulence Club in Beverly Hills was resplendent with luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the grand ballroom, which was filled with society's elite. Gentle music played in the background as servers in crisp uniforms moved gracefully among the guests. Lucas Andrade, a towering figure of dominance and wealth, made his entrance, immediately capturing the attention of those around him. His presence exuded confidence, and he walked with an air of entitlement. Clara Álvarez, disguised as a simple waitress for the event, moved carefully through the crowd, serving drinks and observing Lucas from a distance. Her long, wavy brown hair was tied back, and her eyes, a striking green, were focused and determined. She had been waiting for this moment, the beginning of her plan to infiltrate Lucas's world and gather evidence against him. As Clara approached a wealthy guest, she accidentally bumped into him, spilling a drink. The guest, flustered, began to make a scene. Before Clara could fully apologize, Lucas seized the opportunity to belittle her. "Watch where you're going, girl," Lucas's cold blue eyes bore into Clara. "Can't you even manage a simple task without making a mess?" Humiliated, Clara apologized profusely, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. The scene was captured by several attendees on their smartphones, the video quickly spreading on social media. This public humiliation was a stark reminder of the power and arrogance Lucas wielded. But for Clara, it was a catalyst, strengthening her resolve to take him down. Clara sat in her small, modest apartment in Los Angeles. The space was neatly kept, reflecting her practical and determined nature. She replayed the viral video of her humiliation, feeling a mix of anger and determination welling up inside her. The memory of her father's downfall at the hands of Lucas flashed through her mind, a painful reminder of why she had embarked on this journey. She took a deep breath and reviewed her plan. It was intricate and risky, but it was the only way to gather the evidence needed to expose Lucas. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, urging her to be strong and just. Determined to move forward, Clara's resolve was solidified. She would not allow Lucas to destroy more lives with his greed and cruelty. She was ready to take the next step. Clara arrived at Isabella Martinez's law office, an elegant space in the heart of Los Angeles. The office was filled with books and legal documents, a testament to Isabella's dedication and expertise. Isabella, with her short black hair and expressive brown eyes, greeted Clara warmly. They sat in Isabella's office, discussing the details of Clara's plan and the recent humiliation. Isabella listened intently, offering legal advice and emotional support. "You've always been strong, Clara," Isabella said, her voice filled with conviction. "We'll get through this together. Lucas needs to be stopped, and I'll help you every step of the way." They outlined the next steps, discussing potential risks and how to mitigate them. Isabella's support gave Clara the confidence she needed to proceed with her plan, knowing she wasn't alone in this fight. Henry Carter's newsroom was a bustling hub of activity. Journalists worked tirelessly, surrounded by papers, computers, and bulletin boards filled with notes. Clara felt a surge of hope as she entered the space, knowing that Henry was known for his integrity and commitment to uncovering the truth. Clara shared her story with Henry, detailing the humiliation and her plan to gather evidence against Lucas. Henry, initially skeptical, listened carefully, intrigued by Clara's determination and the potential for exposing a major scandal. "I believe you," Henry finally said, his gentle blue eyes reflecting his sincerity. "I'll help you. We need to gather as much evidence as possible to bring him down." This alliance provided Clara with a crucial tool to disseminate the evidence she would collect. Together, they could expose Lucas's corruption to the world. Clara, now working undercover as a part-time cleaner in Lucas's mansion, discovered a hidden archive room. The dimly lit space was filled with old documents and ledgers, the air thick with the scent of aged paper. Clara's heart pounded as she began to sift through the files, finding documents linking Lucas to illegal activities. Carefully, she photographed the documents, knowing that this tangible evidence was critical to her mission. As she worked, she heard footsteps approaching. Panic surged through her, but she managed to hide just in time as one of Lucas's security guards entered the room. The guard scanned the room suspiciously but eventually left. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. This close call added tension and urgency to her mission, but it also confirmed that she was on the right track. She had the first pieces of evidence she needed. Clara returned to her apartment with the first batch of evidence. She contacted Isabella and Henry to discuss their next steps. Meanwhile, Lucas, unaware of Clara's true identity and intentions, began to feel the pressure from the growing public backlash due to the viral video. As Clara prepared for a major event where she planned to gather more crucial evidence, she felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but she was ready to face whatever came her way. The fight for justice had only just begun. Isabella's law office was a sanctuary of elegance and efficiency. Large windows allowed natural light to spill over the dark wood furniture and walls lined with legal tomes. Clara and Isabella sat across from each other, a plan unfolding between them. "We need to create a new identity for you, Clara," Isabella said, her tone serious. "One that can get you deeper into Lucas's circle." Clara nodded, her green eyes reflecting both determination and anxiety. "I've been thinking the same. We need something convincing." They spent hours discussing and crafting Clara's new persona. They decided on the name Elena Ramirez, a wealthy investor from New York looking to expand her portfolio in Los Angeles. Isabella used her legal connections to forge documents and set up the necessary background. "With this identity, you'll have the credibility to mingle with Lucas and his associates at a higher level," Isabella explained. By the time they finished, Clara felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. This new identity was her ticket to deeper infiltration, but it also meant greater risks. The Opulence Club was hosting another elite event, and this time, Clara attended as Elena Ramirez. She wore a sleek black dress that accentuated her figure and added a touch of sophistication to her demeanor. Her long hair was styled elegantly, and her confidence was palpable as she mingled with the guests. Lucas was there, of course, surrounded by his usual entourage. Clara approached cautiously, striking up conversations with key figures and gathering information. She listened intently, making mental notes of any useful details. As she sipped her champagne, she overheard a conversation between two of Lucas's associates about a secret meeting involving some shady dealings. Her ears perked up. "The meeting is set for next week at the Highland Hotel," one of them whispered. It's all very hush-hush. Only the top players are invited. Clara's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of lead she needed. Later that week, Clara found herself sneaking into the archive room at Lucas's mansion again. The room was dimly lit, filled with old documents and ledgers that could potentially expose Lucas's crimes. She moved quickly, photographing anything that seemed relevant. Just as she was about to leave, she heard footsteps approaching. Her pulse quickened, and she ducked behind a large filing cabinet, holding her breath. Lucas entered the room, his sharp eyes scanning the area. He seemed suspicious, his instincts telling him something was off. Clara remained perfectly still, praying he wouldn't find her. After a tense few minutes, Lucas left, still looking unconvinced but unable to spot her. Clara exhaled quietly, her heart pounding. This close call made her realize just how dangerous her mission was, but it also fueled her determination. She couldn't afford any mistakes. Clara, posing as Elena Ramirez, infiltrated the secret meeting at the Highland Hotel. The private room was filled with influential people, and the air was thick with tension. She kept a low profile, listening carefully and recording the conversations on a hidden device. The meeting was a goldmine of information. Lucas and his associates discussed various illegal activities, from money laundering to bribery. Clara's eyes widened as she realized the extent of their operations. As the meeting continued, Clara's confidence grew. She mingled with the attendees, gathering more details and solidifying her cover as Elena Ramirez. The success of this infiltration boosted her morale, but she knew she had to be careful. Any misstep could blow her cover. Back in Henry's bustling newsroom, Clara shared the recordings and documents she had collected. Henry, with his robust frame and gentle blue eyes, listened intently, his face reflecting both concern and determination. "This is incredible, Clara," Henry said, leaning back in his chair. "But we need to be cautious. Lucas has a lot of power and won't hesitate to use it against us." They discussed how to proceed with the publication, deciding to release the information in phases to avoid alerting Lucas prematurely. Henry's expertise in investigative journalism was invaluable, and Clara felt reassured knowing she had him on her side. Their partnership solidified, with Henry preparing a series of explosive articles that could bring down Lucas's empire. Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing they were getting closer to justice. The storm was gathering, and Clara knew the coming days would be crucial. She had to remain vigilant and careful, but her resolve was stronger than ever. The evidence she had gathered was a powerful weapon, and with Henry and Isabella by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As she prepared for the next phase of her mission, Clara couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread. The fight was far from over, but she was determined to see it through to the end. Lucas Andrade's mansion was usually a fortress of luxury and calm, but today, a sense of unease permeated the air. Lucas sat in his study, reviewing the security footage with a growing sense of paranoia. The footage from the archive room showed subtle but noticeable irregularities, things were being moved, and someone was snooping around. Lucas leaned back in his leather chair, his cold blue eyes narrowing. He was certain someone was trying to undermine him. He pressed a button on his desk, summoning his head of security. "Increase security around the archive room and all sensitive areas," Lucas ordered. "I want eyes everywhere. Whoever is doing this will be caught." His suspicion grew, making Clara's mission more dangerous. The mansion, already a difficult place to navigate, became a near impenetrable fortress. Lucas's paranoia turned the atmosphere tense, but it also signaled to Clara that she was on the right track. At Isabella's elegant law office in downtown Los Angeles, the atmosphere was tense. Isabella sat behind her desk, her fingers tapping nervously on a legal document. Her firm had received pressure from Lucas's legal team, urging them to drop Clara's case. The implications were clear: continuing to support Clara could mean severe professional consequences for Isabella. Clara entered the office, her face reflecting a mix of determination and concern. "Isabella, what's wrong?" Isabella looked up, her eyes filled with worry. "Lucas's team is pressuring the firm to drop your case. They're using every dirty trick in the book." Clara's heart sank. "I'm so sorry, Isabella. I never wanted you to get caught in the crossfire." Isabella shook her head. "This isn't your fault, Clara. We knew it would get tough. I just need to decide whether to stay with the firm or go independent." The decision weighed heavily on Isabella, but her loyalty to Clara and her commitment to justice prevailed. She chose to support Clara, knowing it could cost her job and reputation. "We'll fight this together," Isabella said firmly. "No matter what it takes." Clara received an anonymous tip about a major deal involving Lucas. The tip pointed to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It was risky, but Clara knew she had to investigate. She arrived at the warehouse, her senses heightened with caution. The warehouse was dimly lit and eerily quiet. Clara moved silently, her eyes scanning for any signs of activity. Suddenly, she heard voices. She crept closer, trying to catch snippets of the conversation. It was about the illegal dealings she was looking for, but something felt off. Before she could react, the doors slammed shut behind her. Panic surged through her as she realized it was a trap. Lucas's men surrounded her, their intentions clear. "Did you really think you could sneak around without us noticing?" one of them sneered. Clara's mind raced. She needed to escape. Using her quick thinking, she managed to knock over a stack of crates, creating a diversion. She sprinted towards a small window and squeezed through, her heart pounding as she made her escape. Breathless and shaken, Clara realized Lucas now knew someone was actively working against him. The stakes had just gotten higher. Back at Henry's bustling newsroom, the tension was palpable. Henry had just published the first article with the evidence Clara had provided. The public's reaction was immediate and explosive. Social media buzzed with outrage, and news outlets picked up the story, amplifying the scandal. Clara watched the coverage from her apartment, feeling a mix of satisfaction and anxiety. The backlash against Lucas was intense. Protesters gathered outside his mansion, demanding justice. Lucas faced increasing pressure from the media and his peers, his once unassailable position now under siege. Henry called Clara to discuss the next steps. "This is just the beginning, Clara. We need to keep the momentum going. Lucas will fight back hard, and we need to be ready." Clara agreed, knowing that the public backlash was both an asset and a liability. It drew attention to their cause but also put them in Lucas's crosshairs. They had to stay one step ahead. In the quiet of her apartment, Clara read the article again, absorbing the public's reaction. The comments and messages of support fueled her determination. Despite the increased risk, she was more committed than ever to bringing Lucas down. She contacted Isabella and Henry, organizing a strategy session. They needed to gather the final pieces of evidence and plan their next moves carefully. The danger was real, but so was their resolve. "We're getting closer, but we have to be careful," Clara said. "Lucas is desperate, and that makes him dangerous." Isabella nodded. "We'll do whatever it takes. We've come too far to back down now." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Clara's heart skipped a beat, fearing it could be Lucas's men. She cautiously opened the door to find a courier with an envelope. Inside was a note and a USB drive. The note read, "For justice. An ally." Clara plugged the USB drive into her laptop, her eyes widening as she saw the contents. It was more evidence, financial records, emails, and documents linking Lucas to political corruption. This was the break they needed. As Clara, Isabella, and Henry reviewed the new evidence, they felt a renewed sense of hope. The pieces were falling into place. The battle was far from over, but they had what they needed to bring Lucas to justice. The stakes were higher than ever. Clara's resolve was stronger, and with the new evidence in hand, they were ready to deepen the conflict. Lucas's desperation would make him more dangerous, but Clara, Isabella, and Henry were prepared to face whatever came their way. The fight for justice continued, with the final showdown on the horizon. The tension in Lucas's mansion was palpable. Lucas stood in his study, his jaw clenched as he reviewed the latest articles and the growing public backlash. His cold blue eyes scanned the headlines, each one a dagger to his carefully constructed empire. How did this happen? Lucas demanded, his voice icy. His head of security and legal team stood before him, looking tense and unsure. We're investigating, sir, his head of security responded. We believe there's a mole feeding information to the press. Lucas's expression darkened. Find out who it is and deal with them. I want no loose ends. To discredit the articles, Lucas used his influence to launch a smear campaign against Henry and his publication. He spread false stories, questioned their integrity, and threatened lawsuits. He also intensified his efforts to uncover the mole, hiring private investigators to find out who was leaking the information. This counterattack made it harder for Clara and Henry to operate, increasing the stakes and the danger for all involved. But it also showed Lucas's desperation, a sign that their efforts were having an impact. Clara, still undercover as Elena Ramirez, attended a high-stakes meeting at a luxury hotel suite in downtown Los Angeles. The suite was opulently decorated, reflecting the wealth and power of its occupants. Clara mingled with the attendees, her eyes and ears alert for any useful information. During the meeting, Lucas discussed a major deal with a foreign investor. Clara listened intently, her heart racing as she realized the scope of their illegal activities. She discreetly recorded the conversation, capturing evidence of money laundering in offshore accounts. As the meeting concluded, Clara noticed a document left unattended on the table. Seizing the opportunity, she quickly photographed it. The document detailed a secret offshore account, providing critical evidence for their case. But Lucas's security was vigilant. As Clara prepared to leave, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Miss Ramirez, can I help you with something? One of Lucas's security guards asked, suspicion in his eyes. Clara's mind raced. Oh, I just wanted to get another look at that beautiful view before I go, she said, gesturing towards the window. The guard nodded but didn't look entirely convinced. Clara managed to slip away, her heart pounding. She knew she had to be more careful. Lucas's security was tightening, and any misstep could be disastrous. At Isabella's law office, the pressure was mounting. Isabella sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of legal documents and files. Her firm was feeling the heat from Lucas's legal team, and the pressure to drop Clara's case was increasing. Isabella's boss entered the office, his expression stern. Isabella, we need to talk, he said. The firm can't afford to be involved in this case anymore. Lucas Andrade is too powerful, and the risks are too high. Isabella looked up, her eyes filled with determination. I can't abandon Clara. This case is about justice, not just for her, but for everyone Lucas has hurt. Her boss sighed. I understand your passion, but we have to think about the firm. You need to make a choice. The ultimatum weighed heavily on Isabella. She knew supporting Clara could cost her job and reputation, but she couldn't turn her back on her friend. After a long moment of silence, she made her decision. I'm staying with Clara, Isabella said firmly. If that means I have to leave the firm, so be it. Her boss nodded, respecting her decision even if he didn't agree with it. Isabella's choice highlighted the pervasive influence of Lucas and the personal sacrifices made in the pursuit of justice. She began the process of setting up her own practice, determined to fight for what was right. Back at Henry's bustling newsroom, the investigation was yielding results. Henry had uncovered a connection between Lucas's illegal activities and several prominent politicians. The evidence was explosive, implicating not just Lucas but a network of powerful figures. Henry and his team worked tirelessly, verifying the information and preparing the articles. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was their determination. As Henry reviewed the final draft of the article, Clara entered the newsroom. "Henry, I found something," she said, handing him the photographs from the meeting. Henry's eyes widened as he looked at the documents. "This is it, Clara. This could bring down his entire operation." They discussed the next steps, knowing the publication of this information would have widespread repercussions. The breakthrough increased the stakes significantly, but it also brought them closer to their goal. Clara returned to Lucas's mansion, her heart heavy with the knowledge that their fight was far from over. She needed more evidence to ensure Lucas's downfall. Disguised as Elena Ramirez, she managed to gain access to Lucas's personal files. As she sifted through the documents, she heard footsteps approaching. Panic surged through her, but she continued her search, knowing she had little time. Just as she found a crucial file, the door opened. "Miss Ramirez, what are you doing here?" Lucas himself stood in the doorway, his eyes cold and suspicious. Clara's mind raced. "I was just looking for the restroom," she lied, trying to keep her voice steady. Lucas didn't believe her. "In my private study?" "I think not." Before he could react, Clara grabbed the file and ran. She darted through the mansion, dodging security and desperately searching for an escape. She found an open window and climbed out, landing in the garden below. Breathless and terrified, she made her way to safety. Clara knew she was now a prime suspect, and Lucas would stop at nothing to find her. The close call forced her to go into hiding, making it harder to continue her mission but also intensifying her determination. Clara, Isabella, and Henry regrouped at a secluded safe house. The fight was far from over, but they were more determined than ever. The final pieces of evidence were in place, and they prepared for the ultimate showdown. The climax was approaching, and with it, the resolution to their long struggle for justice. The secluded safe house in the outskirts of Los Angeles was the perfect setting for Clara, Isabella, and Henry to devise their final plan. The tension in the room was palpable as they gathered around a large table, covered in documents, photographs, and laptops. The stakes had never been higher, and they knew this was their last chance to bring Lucas down. Clara spoke first, her voice steady but filled with determination. "We have all the evidence we need. Now, we need to figure out the best way to release it without giving Lucas a chance to retaliate." Henry nodded, his blue eyes focused. "We need a coordinated release. Articles, press conferences, social media. It has to hit all at once, so he can't suppress it." Isabella, her short black hair framing her intense expression, added, "We also need to ensure our safety. Lucas is desperate, and he won't hesitate to use extreme measures." They spent hours mapping out their strategy, each detail meticulously planned. They decided on a date and time for the release, ensuring all the key players were in place. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot at exposing Lucas's corruption and dismantling his empire. As they finished, Clara looked at her friends, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. "This is it. We're going to bring him down." Meanwhile, in his mansion, Lucas Andrade was growing increasingly desperate. The walls of his luxurious fortress seemed to be closing in on him. The pressure from the media, the public backlash, and the relentless pursuit of Clara and her allies were taking their toll. Lucas paced his study, his mind racing. He knew he had to act fast to protect his empire. He summoned his most trusted advisors, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to find Clara Álvarez and her accomplices. They must be silenced." His advisors nodded, but there was a palpable sense of fear in the room. Lucas's desperation made him more dangerous than ever. He was willing to go to any lengths to maintain his power, even if it meant targeting Clara directly. As the meeting concluded, Lucas gave one final, chilling order. "Make sure they're found and dealt with. No loose ends." The day of the press conference arrived. Clara, disguised in a nondescript outfit and wearing a hat to conceal her identity, made her way to the venue. The large conference hall was filled with journalists, cameras, and curious onlookers. Lucas was there, ready to announce a major business deal that he hoped would distract the public from the mounting allegations against him. Clara took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she approached the podium. As Lucas began his speech, she stepped forward, interrupting him. "Excuse me, Mr. Andrade. I have something important to share." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Clara. Lucas's cold blue eyes narrowed as he recognized her. "What is the meaning of this?" Clara held up a folder, her voice strong and clear. "I have evidence of your illegal activities, Mr. Andrade. The world deserves to know the truth." Lucas's face contorted with rage. "This is preposterous. Guards, remove her." Before the guards could act, Henry and Isabella, standing at the back of the room, signaled to the journalists. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust forward as Clara began to reveal the evidence. She laid out the documents, photographs, and recordings, exposing Lucas's corruption for all to see. As Clara spoke, the media frenzy escalated. The evidence was overwhelming, and the journalists were relentless in their questions. Lucas's facade began to crumble under the weight of the revelations. Clara removed her hat, revealing her true identity. "My name is Clara Álvarez, and I am here to bring justice for my family and all those you have wronged, Mr. Andrade." Lucas, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to regain control. "This is a witch hunt. None of this is true." But the evidence was irrefutable. As Clara continued to present her case, the mood in the room shifted. The public and the media were turning against Lucas. His empire, once seemingly untouchable, was beginning to crumble. In a final act of desperation, Lucas lunged at Clara, but the security personnel intervened, restraining him. The scene was chaotic, but the truth was finally out. The fallout from the revelation was swift and severe. Lucas was arrested, his empire dismantled piece by piece. The authorities launched investigations into his illegal activities, and many of his associates were also implicated. Clara, Isabella, and Henry watched as justice was served. The sense of victory was bittersweet, knowing the personal sacrifices they had made to reach this point. Clara felt a mix of relief and sorrow as she reflected on her journey. In the days that followed, Clara began the process of rebuilding her life and her family's legacy. She used her restored wealth to help others, honoring her father's memory by supporting charitable causes and advocating for justice. Isabella, having left her previous firm, opened her own law practice dedicated to fighting corruption and helping those in need. Her decision to stand by Clara had cost her dearly, but it had also given her a renewed sense of purpose. Henry received accolades for his investigative reporting, but he remained humble, focusing on continuing his work for the public good. His integrity and perseverance had been instrumental in exposing the truth. As the dust settled, Clara, Isabella, and Henry met in a peaceful park to reflect on their journey. They shared a moment of peace and looked forward to the future, knowing their bond and commitment to justice had been strengthened by their shared struggle. The final chapter of their story was yet to be written, but they faced it with hope and determination. Lucas Andrade sat in his small prison cell, a far cry from the luxurious mansion he once called home. The walls were bare, the bed uncomfortable, and the air thick with the reality of his downfall. As he stared at the ceiling, memories of his actions played in his mind like a relentless film reel. For the first time in years, Lucas began to reflect on his choices. He thought about the people he had hurt, the lives he had destroyed in his pursuit of power and wealth. The faces of those he had wronged, including Clara, haunted him. He had always dismissed the consequences of his actions, but now, in the silence of his cell, he could no longer ignore them. The media frenzy that followed his arrest had been overwhelming. His empire crumbled, his assets were seized, and his reputation was shattered. Lucas had lost everything, but in the midst of his despair, he felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar, remorse. As days turned into weeks, Lucas found himself in the prison library, reading books on ethics, justice, and redemption. He attended counseling sessions and support groups, seeking to understand the depths of his failings and how he might atone for them. It was a long, painful journey, but Lucas was determined to change. One night, as he lay in his bunk, he made a silent vow. "I will make amends for what I've done," he whispered to the empty room. "Somehow, I will find a way to help those I've hurt." Clara Álvarez stood in her newly renovated apartment, a sense of peace washing over her. The space was warm and inviting, decorated with a mix of modern and vintage pieces that reflected her personality. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil she had endured over the past few years. Using her restored wealth, Clara had begun to rebuild her life and her family's legacy. She established a foundation in her father's name, dedicated to supporting victims of corporate greed and corruption. The foundation offered financial assistance, legal support, and counseling to those in need, ensuring that others wouldn't have to suffer as she had. Clara's days were filled with meetings, planning, and outreach. She found fulfillment in helping others and honoring her father's memory. The foundation quickly gained recognition for its work, and Clara became a respected figure in the community. One evening, as she reviewed the foundation's progress, Clara received a call from Isabella. "Hey, Clara. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." Clara smiled. "I'm doing well, Isabella. The foundation is really taking off. Thank you for everything you've done to support me." Isabella's voice was warm. "You've done all the hard work, Clara. I'm just glad I could help. How about we meet up this weekend and catch up properly?" "I'd love that," Clara replied. "Let's plan on it." As she hung up the phone, Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had come a long way from the young woman who was humiliated at that charity gala. Now, she was using her experiences to make a positive impact on the world. Isabella Martinez stood in her new law office, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. The space was elegant and professional, with large windows that offered a stunning view of downtown Los Angeles. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with legal texts and case files. After leaving her previous firm, Isabella had opened her own practice, dedicated to fighting corruption and advocating for justice. Her decision to support Clara had been a turning point, and now she was determined to continue that work on a larger scale. Isabella's firm quickly gained a reputation for taking on challenging cases and winning. She assembled a team of like-minded lawyers, all passionate about making a difference. Together, they worked tirelessly to hold powerful individuals and corporations accountable for their actions. One afternoon, as Isabella reviewed a case file, her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Martinez, you have a visitor." Isabella looked up. "Who is it?" "It's Henry Carter," the assistant replied. "He says it's important." Isabella's face lit up. "Send him in." Henry entered the office, a broad smile on his face. "Isabella, it's good to see you." "You too, Henry," Isabella said, rising to shake his hand. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to congratulate you on your success," Henry said. "And I have a proposition for you. I've been working on a series of articles about systemic corruption in the corporate world. I think your expertise could be invaluable in uncovering the legal aspects and helping to build a solid case." Isabella's eyes sparkled with interest. "That sounds like a fantastic project, Henry. Count me in." As they discussed the details, Isabella felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her decision to support Clara had led her to this moment, and she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. Henry Carter sat at his desk in the bustling newsroom, the noise and energy of the place invigorating him. His latest investigative series had just been published, exposing a network of corruption that spanned several industries. The response had been overwhelming, with accolades pouring in from readers and colleagues alike. Despite the recognition, Henry remained humble. He knew that his work was far from over, and there were still many stories that needed to be told. His commitment to uncovering the truth and holding the powerful accountable was stronger than ever. One morning, as Henry reviewed the latest feedback on his articles, he received a call from Clara. "Henry, I just read your latest series. It's incredible work." "Thank you, Clara," Henry replied. "I couldn't have done it without the help of people like you and Isabella. We're all in this together." Clara's voice was filled with warmth. "I'm proud of what we've accomplished. You've made a real difference." Henry smiled. "So have you, Clara. Your foundation is changing lives. We've all come a long way." As they chatted, Henry felt a deep sense of satisfaction. His journey had been challenging, but it had also been incredibly rewarding. The triumphs and setbacks had shaped him into the journalist he was today, and he was grateful for every moment. Later that day, Henry received an email from a prominent news organization, inviting him to speak at a conference on investigative journalism. It was an honor, and Henry eagerly accepted, knowing that it was an opportunity to inspire others and share his experiences. As he prepared for the conference, Henry reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The pursuit of justice had been difficult, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph and growth. He was ready to continue that journey, wherever it might lead. The park was peaceful, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Clara, Isabella, and Henry met at their favorite spot, a secluded area with a beautiful view of a small lake. They sat on a bench, reflecting on their journey and the impact they had made. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," Clara said, her voice filled with wonder. "From that first meeting in Isabella's office to everything we've accomplished." Isabella nodded. "We've faced a lot of challenges, but we never gave up. We stayed true to our mission." Henry smiled. "And look at what we've achieved. Lucas is in prison, his empire dismantled, and we've made a real difference in people's lives." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, enjoying the tranquility of the park. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had also been filled with moments of triumph and growth. They had forged a bond that would last a lifetime. Clara looked at her friends, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you both. Your support and dedication made all the difference." Isabella reached out and squeezed Clara's hand. "We're in this together, Clara. Always." Henry nodded. "We've accomplished so much, but there's still more work to be done. I'm looking forward to whatever comes next." As they continued to talk and reflect, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The future was uncertain, but she knew that with her friends by her side, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park. Clara, Isabella, and Henry stood up, ready to continue their journey. They walked away from the bench, their hearts filled with hope and their spirits unbroken. The final chapter of their story had yet to be written, but they faced it with courage and determination. They had overcome immense obstacles and made a lasting impact on the world. Now, they were ready to embrace the future and continue their fight for justice, knowing that together, they could achieve anything.